Hey, so this is a bit of a film review, but also a few reflections on one of my favorite films, which is Rocky 4. Once again, I've just watched the final fight. In fact, I'll show you the credits. Um, and this new film, Creed 2. Firstly, I'm grateful that I got to see Creed 2 because when I was in China, there's only a limited number of Western films that are over there. And I honestly thought by the time I got back here, I would have missed it. Like it would have been out of UK cinemas. But no, it was showing, and I went the other night with my friend. Um, so, first of all, the two films are obviously connected, directly connected. I'm not going to give a long synopsis of the films because likely the people watching this video are already Rocky fans. So, I don't need to preach to the converted, so to speak. I just want to share some of my own thoughts about Creed 2 and about Rocky 4. Rocky 4 was commercially the most successful of the original Rocky run, and I'm really not surprised by that. Although it is an unusual situation, it's very rare that sequels do better than the original. It's even more rare that a fourth film in a franchise does so well. I can't think of any other example where a fourth film in a series done so well, like it was really the dominant film. It's definitely my favorite of the Rocky films. I love all the Rocky films, but I think Rocky 4 is something special because it's got the whole political context, the whole Cold War thing, made in 1985, the year I was born. I thought that worked very, very well. Now, like I say, the film done commercially very well. I understand it was the most successful sports film in a quarter of a century, and that really doesn't surprise me. It had its critics. The Golden Raspberries gave it 5 awards, including astonishingly worst soundtrack. Now I don't know what drug they were on, but to say that Rocky Four had a bad soundtrack is astonishing. In fact, I think that was the best thing about it, or nearly the best thing, because the soundtrack in Rocky Four is like I can't describe it. I cannot think of any other film that has that level of sheer adrenaline in terms of working out. I used one of the soundtracks for my own fight, in fact. Can't remember which one, but that score by Survivor, the band Survivor, was just electric. It was intense. It was like an out of body experience. It was, I cannot praise it highly enough because what that does for adrenaline is just astonishing. And Sylvester Stallone is a genius to have come up with this stuff. I mean, I can't praise it highly enough. Um, so that final fight, where it's just like it becomes this war of attrition in the ring, it's utterly phenomenal. Going to have to plug this in. The cultural influence of Rocky Four is also profound. It's been parodied in Family Guy, um, and with the dominance of fighters from Eastern Europe and Russia over the last sort of 20 years, uh, it's kind of lent itself to a lot of analogies, perhaps some of them a little bit lazy or cliched, but basically every strong heavyweight from Eastern Europe or Russia has been called Ivan Drago ever since, going back to Nikolai Valuev, Sultan Ibragimov, Ruslan Chagayev, the Klitschko brothers, of course. Even in lighter weight divisions, I believe Ruslan Provodnikov. Well, actually, Provodnikov was called the Siberian Rocky. Um, but that shows the power that that film had. And it's not a very long film, it's about 90 minutes, but it was a phenomenon. One of my absolute favourite films. I can understand it not being listed as a masterpiece in the sense of Gone with the Wind or Titanic, but in its own right, it was a damn good film, and it was something special. Now, Creed 2. If you haven't seen the film, there may be some spoilers in what I'm going to say. I knew Creed 2 wasn't going to be a carbon copy of Rocky 4, and I didn't want it to be. I watched Rocky 4 with my friend just before we went out. Firstly, I think Michael B. Jordan is great at the role. I think he reminds me a little bit of Anthony Joshua, just as I think there's a slight resemblance there, and there's something about him reminds me a bit of Joshua. He's a bit of a smaller guy, but I see similarities there. Now, the film, what did I make of it? I didn't like it as much as Rocky Four. I'll say that from the outset. For me, it's not. It won't be as special to me as Rocky Four is. Having said that, it was a pretty impressive film in its own right. I mean, I honestly don't think there's been a single film in the Rocky Creed series that I would say has been disappointing or at least bad. I think they're all good, including Rocky Balboa, including Rocky Five, including the ones that kind of got panned by critics. I think they're all good. Creed Two um, is all about obviously Adonis Creed facing the ghosts of his past. Um, I think there's a lot more emotion in this film than Rocky Four. I don't mean that Rocky Four didn't have emotion. Of course it did, but I think Rocky Four emphasized the action a little bit more, whereas Creed Two focuses a lot more on family drama, a lot more on that. And I understand why they done that, but I'm not sure if it was the best strategy. Um, I thought it was a little bit lengthy on that side of things. Like the whole thing was his baby deaf or not, and it's like I don't think that was really necessary. I understand why they do it, but if I was editing that film, I would edit some of that a little bit down because I think it was just time consuming and it took away from. In the end of the day, it's a boxing film. Um, I mean, you need character development, you need a backstory, of course you do, but I think Creed 2 was a little bit heavy on that side of things. The whole scene where Dolph Lundgren's character, Ivan Drago, comes to Philadelphia and he's sort of sitting in Rocky's restaurant and he's a very bitter individual. His whole life's been ruined by that loss in their history. I thought that was very well done. Um, the fight scenes were very raw, very brutal. If you haven't seen the film, there's a spoiler I'm going to say here, but basically, it shows the sort of things that can happen in the boxing world. So, um, Adonis keeps the title, but the fight was such a fluke because he gets severely injured. And that was quite clever because obviously it's bringing back ghosts of what happened to his father. And it's also realistic because it's the sort of thing that, boxing is not clean. It's not always a case of one man wins and one man loses. Sometimes there's question marks. And I thought that was good the way they presented that. I like the whole training scene in the desert. I thought that was very well done. Whereas you have the whole Siberian tundra in Rocky Four, you have the California desert in Creed Two. It's something new, it's original, very rough. It looks like they got some guys from San Bruno to some MS-13 gang members or something to be Creed sparring partners. I thought that was very well done. I thought that was a good sequence. The music, well, a lot of it was focusing on his girlfriend, the actress Tessa Thompson's, her music in the film. And it was kind of a nice touch. It was sentimental, it was personal. It won't come anywhere close to the music of Rocky Four. I mean, I was a bit disappointed by that. I thought they could have had slightly more. I mean, it's a boxing movie. It's not that music just didn't lend to the. I know why it was done because it was personal in the storyline, but it's not workout music. Not going to lift weights to that, are you? Really? Um, Whereas in the original Creed, that scene where he's fighting Pretty Ricky Conlon, um, the entrance music for that I thought worked well. Although I'm not a fan of R&B rap, I thought that worked well. Whereas the final fight in Creed 2, they just played the original Rocky music. It was a bit like, well, can you not come up with something more original? I was a little disappointed by that. I thought they could have done a better soundtrack. As for the fight sequences, I can't fault that. Very brutal, very realistic. I thought the casting was great. The guy who played Victor Creed, excuse me, Victor Victor Drago, I thought was very good. Unless I'm mistaken, he's a real world boxer. I may be wrong about that, but I think he is a real life boxer. I haven't done any research for this video, so I need to check that again. I like the fact that they gave a little bit more character development to the Dragos, and they made them a bit more three-dimensional than just these callous, ruthless killing machines. They had kind of family connections on the Drago side as well, where Bridget Nielsen's character abandoned them, and they were left to fend for themselves in the streets of Ukraine. I thought that whole thing was well done because it made the Dragos human, and it brought a human side to them. I would have liked to see a bit more reconciliation in the end, rather than just the Dragos continuing to go on in bitterness. And I thought that could have been done a little better. It demands a third film, and I'd be very surprised if there's not another Creed film. So all in all, I would give Creed 2 maybe 7.5 out of 10. It's definitely a good film. It's worth watching. It will never have the place that Rocky Four has in my mind and my heart. I think Rocky Four is something special, but Creed Two, it looks at angles that aren't always looked at in boxing films. It's superb fight scenes, good casts. In almost every sense, it's good. I think the soundtrack could have been better. I think they were a little bit heavy on the family side of things. Although it was important, I just think there was a little bit too much focus on that. Um, I mean, the thing about 80s films was you had action, you had feel-good soundtracks. I feel modern films just don't have that. I mean, there just isn't really memorable. People are going to come away with this film. It's a bit depressing. It was kind of a depressing film, whereas Rocky Four was a really feel-good film, notwithstanding the death of Apollo. Even though the ending of Creed 2, where he wins the fight and he goes to visit his father's grave, I suppose you could say reconciles with the ghost of his father, I thought the overall tone was darker than Rocky Four, and I'm not sure if I liked that. Um, it was very too much emphasis on drama, too little emphasis on just feel-good action. I think the reason 80s films were so popular is because they had that. Modern films are clever, they're well shot, but they're a little bit too depressing sometimes. There's too little feel good music. You need something like that to get people pumped up, to get them going in the gym. And Creed 2 just doesn't do that, in my opinion. I mean, okay, the desert scene, I'll have to watch it again. Maybe that will, but I don't know. I think it's hard to beat Rocky Four. The only other film for me, and it's outside the Rocky series, is Kickboxer with Jean Claude Van Damme. Streets of Siam and The Eagle Has Landed. Those are also very powerful workout tunes. For me, they're the best. Rocky Four and Kickboxer. No other films come close. Maybe Rocky Three, maybe Rocky Five for that matter. The original Rocky, not so much. It's nice. Nice music. But I thought Rocky Five was also very good for workout music. And it's a pity Rocky Five gets panned. I think it's a lot better than the critics make it out to be. But I've already made a video about that. So nothing changes my mind in terms of Rocky Four being my favorite in the entire series, but and I'd have to look at both Creed films back on back to see which I prefer. Both very good. I thought the whole Moscow thing was well done. I liked the way they had the whole arena set up. But when the lights came round, I honestly thought they were going to show Putin. So when his girlfriend came out singing, I was a little bit okay. I don't know. I think there's certain aspects I would have done differently, but it's a good film in its own right. And if I give Rocky Four 10 out of 10, which I would give Creed 2 7.5 to 8 out of 10. It's a good film. I'll definitely be buying it, but no, it doesn't. For me, it's not quite on par with Rocky Four. And it's nothing to do with the character of Victor Drago. I think he's just as menacing, just as intimidating as his father was in Rocky Four, but there's something about it I think just I would have taken slightly different approaches. Let me know your thoughts.